Many times in this life, it feels like we are so far from home. We find ourselves in situations where we just have this longing to return home, and oftentimes we can even feel that way at home. And I think what we're seeing is this longing to be home with the Lord, this inner longing that's in each human to be back in the presence of our Maker. You know, I'm one of those people that even though I may look forward to traveling and going somewhere, after about 3 days, I'm ready to come home to sleep in my bed, to just experience my home and in my own way, and which is probably a picture of how spoiled I am. But, I think it is a picture of that deep longing we have in each of us, that we find ourselves in situations where we just feel like we no longer belong. It's so easy to arrive at in these days when there's such a growing violence and hatred in this world. And as Christians, we just no longer feel like we're part of this world. We get this sense that we no longer belong here. But at the same time, we know that if we just see it happening all the way around us, and we're being drawn into this, and we have to be so cautious. Well, this brings me to Psalm 120, which is the first Song of Ascent. It's the first of 15 of these Psalms. And these Psalms really speak to me, particularly in these times. They were songs that they believe were sung by those making a pilgrimage back to the temple to worship the Lord. And during that pilgrimage, you can imagine it was a long journey for many. The anticipation of coming to the temple, of worshiping God, of going to Jerusalem, of seeing family, friends, or whatever that they had not seen in some time. But also a time for reflection and a time to look at their lives in sort of in the context of on your way to worship and on your way to meet the Lord, which kind of speaks to all of us that, in a sense, we're all on this journey where we are on our way to stand before the Lord. And so I'll start with Psalm 120 and read through it. In my distress, I cried to the Lord, and he heard me. Deliver my soul, O Lord, from lying lips and from a deceitful tongue. What shall be given to you, or what shall be done to you, you false tongue? Sharp arrows of the warrior with coals of the broom tree. Well, woe is me that I dwell in Meshech, that I dwell among the tents of Kedar. My soul has dwelt too long with one who hates peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. And so from the beginning, we see that the psalmist says that he is feeling this distress. And the source of his distress is the lying lips and the deceitful tongue all around him. And it's as if everywhere he turns and from every direction, he is hearing these lying lips and this deceitful tongue. And most of us are paying attention to the news in these days and all that is going on, certainly get a sense of that. It's almost like we used to hear just during election season, and now it's 24/7, 365, where we are constantly bombarded with these different versions of truth, and we don't know what to believe anymore, and we're just overwhelmed with the deceit and the lies. The psalmist cries out in his distress. He says, I'm distressed and by these slanderous tongues that keep coming at me. And in my distress, I cried out to the Lord, and he recognizes that the Lord is the deliverer of his soul. And so what shall be given to these? And he asks, what do these lying tongues of this lying tongue, and maybe he has a specific person now in mind when he gets here, what shall be given to you, or what shall be done to you, you false tongue? And as this tongue being the source of this problem, of this slander that points to this almost specific false tongue or a specific slander maybe that is the source of all of this distress in his life. And it's as if he makes this suggestion of what this person deserves, that they would deserve or face sharp arrows of the warrior, which would be a judgment, would be that they would bring war in their slanderous tongue, that they would be met with this kind of opposition that would be war. But also with coals of a broom tree, which is kind of something culturally we wouldn't understand, but what it was that they used coals of a broom tree as like charcoal, and it was known to burn particularly long and particularly hot. And they say that they believe that maybe it was this is the source of fire for flaming arrows, the sharp and flaming arrows of a warrior, and there's some suggestion of that. But they would face this hot and long burning fire in these arrows as a source of judgment for their deceit. The psalmist cries out in his distress. He says, "Woe is me," because he finds that he dwells in Meshech, which it was northwest of the promised land. It was what we would know as Turkey, and then those that dwell among the tents of Kedar would be southeast, and so it almost becomes this picture of the far reaches of the lands around the promised land, around Israel, as if the psalmist finds himself that he's in a faraway place, and which uses this as sort of an idiom of a faraway place. Woe to me that I dwell in this faraway place, that I'm far too far away, that I find myself in such a great distance, that I'm living in the midst of these constant lies and in this place that is causing distress constantly. And it's almost like he comes to this realization, and then he makes the statement. He says, my soul has dwelt far too long. I've been far too long in this place, and in the midst of these that hate peace, that long for war, that are just constantly antagonistic towards this psalmist or the psalmist people, or people that love peace, and maybe particularly we would think as people who love the Lord. And he says, I am for peace, and what he's saying is, I am for shalom, not just a lack of war, not just no hostilities in the context of war, but also a contentment for life. I am for peace, for shalom, a contentment for life, of finding my lot in life and enjoying my lot in life, and sort of what we would think of the path that the Lord has set before us, that we would walk that path and do it well, and that we would do it well for Him and for His glory. And the psalmist saying, I am for that peace, but these other people are for war, and are constantly creating this situation and antagonistic towards peace, and creating a situation where they desire war. We can feel that distress of the psalmist, that knows that the deliverer of his soul is the source of hope, and that the deliverer of his soul is the Lord, and that he alone can call us out of that darkness and bring us into that light. And really what we see in this psalmist then is that a realization of this place is not our home. That psalmist looked around, and even if he was in a place that he once called home, he realizes this place is not my home. And maybe this was the beginning of the journey and the pilgrimage for this psalmist, as he made his way towards the temple to worship the Lord and to stand before the Lord. And as we as Christians are maybe today is the first of a new day, as we are making our journey, as we near the end of times, and not knowing how near that might be, but that we are on our journey to stand before Him someday, and we have to know that He is our source of salvation, that he calls us out of this darkness and into the light, and that we can be that source of light even in a dark place. But man, that just enhances that longing for that day when we go home to be with him. And it just enhances that idea that this place is not our home. As Christians, we understand that this is a great blessing, and we don't look down on this life. We know it is a great gift from God, but that there is something greater coming, that we are born again, not into this world and this life, but born again into the kingdom of God. And we long for that day when we are active and living in his presence in that kingdom, and that we are done with sin and this idea of war and these ideas of distress and lying tongues and deceit are all things of the past, all tools of the enemy in this battle that we seem to face daily in this life. This world is not our home, and I hope you know where that home is, and you know the way to that home is through Jesus Christ. And that's Psalm 120. Thanks for joining me with this psalm, and we'll make our way all the way through the Songs of Ascent. Thanks.